And so good afternoon. Let me start it over. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining for part 5 of this conversation, right? Getting out of your own way and choosing the life that you want, right? And so, as I mentioned before, it's a journey around self-awareness. How can we raise our consciousness that in any moment, we are not giving over our control to situations. We are completely at choice. Yeah, a gift from God. We are a choice and being the person that we want to be. So last week we started a dialogue on influencers. And if I was to just kind of give a 1 minute backtrack, we started this journey with who are you? Yeah, that's conversation number 1. Who are you? Right. And it causes us to kind of do some reflection, inflection, kind of unearth, uncovering. That was the process. That's the word we use, uncover the who we are being currently. And if it suits us, if it is serving us now, move forward. And if it's not, how do we choose? Right. And then we learned about energy, levels of energy, catabolic, anabolic energy. That remains true right throughout, right? So I hope you have been spotting your own energy and spotting the energy of others and recognize that oftentimes people are responding only from a position of how they're perceiving the message that they're receiving. Right? We've heard this age-old thing that one's perception is their reality. So how we interpret something in our environment, that and only that determines how we respond from it. And so when we go through this process of uncover, we're able to really take off those filters or built-in filters, that kind of auto mode, right? Or default or belief system that is really based on our past. And some of those messages have served us and is still serving us. And there are some that are blockers. And we kind of spoke about those when we talk about the energy blocks, right? The gales. And then we started the conversation last week around our different influencers. And we covered the spiritual influencer and mental influencer, right? It was our desire, or my desire, to go through emotional influencer, but hey, it was quite a bit to cover. But I'm going to roll this all up tonight. It's 6 key influencers, just basically how to kind of bucket the things that are in and around us, within us and around us, the things that can really trigger stress. So when these different aspects of our lives are out of balance, right, they can trigger a particular stress response. So when you become aware of kind of where things fall in what bucket, what can trigger it, what it does, give you the power of how do you create an alignment in a situation where either you can change it, and if you can't change it, you change your response to it. But bring yourself to a position that where you're at choice and the situation is now serving you how you want to be served. All right. So as I mentioned last week, we spoke about kind of spiritual influencer, kind of the spiritual stress. And that kind of really occurs whatever we're doing is causing us to question our values, our purpose, our goals. We made a clear distinction that spirituality in this kind of context is not religion per se, though religion may fall into spirituality. It actually goes way beyond that, and it speaks to really our sense or connection with our kind of inner self, right? So our values, our purpose, our goals, and our overall belief system really comes to question. And with this, and we recognize that when we are in a position of stress is when something is out of balance, whether there's a conflict in your values, you may be moving in a direction that is kind of counter or conflicting with your purpose or your goals. And so naturally, in those situations when things are out of balance, it will trigger kind of stress response. And those things around purpose, values, and beliefs are called spiritual influencers. Then we touch a little bit on our mental influencers. And that really speaks to really our brain function, really how we use this or box, right, to really serve us in situation. And we talk a little bit about, how multitasking can really stretch us too thin, or if we're having conflicting demands and how those can really impact how we show up and really cause us to not be at our mental or best to process and to deal with situation in the moment, right? So those were covered at length last week. And though I said I'm going to wrap up the remaining 4 influencers today and hopefully just give you a little tease of some real steps and strategies of how you can make really big changes in your life, right? And though the changes can be big, sometimes the steps can be so small, right? So tonight I am going to touch on emotional influencers and the remaining, and they will just flow right through. I encourage you to use the chat, ask questions, unmute, make notes, but most importantly, when you are here, is to be present, absorb. How does this really show up for you in your life? What do you do with this awareness? You know, if something really came up for you, what, if any, are there insights coming from the conversation? And how can you use this insight to move into a position that serves you? All right, so we talk about emotional influencers. I'm going to spend a little longer time on this because I don't know if you have ever been in an organization that actually dives into emotional intelligence. Because the truth is, who really talks about emotions outside of, you know, when you get into the job? And I think that's when it's realized that, hey, we have been kind of hiding away from this whole thing for so long. It's not really a big part of conversations as we even prepare ourselves. It's not a big part of the dialogue. And I think education is shifting somewhat, and a lot is done to really help students understand this concept of emotion, because we kind of hide from it sometimes. We have some belief system about emotions that may not be serving us. And so let's dive in and see what comes up for you, right? So when we talk about this whole concept of the emotional influencer, there are a few things that we have to consider, and it literally is very much aligned to emotional intelligence, right? The factors are simply, emotional factors are simply those things of or they're related to or feelings along with their moods, right? And so the way we think about, express, and manage emotions in ourselves, yep, not just ourselves, and in others, that will influence our energy and our performance in any situation, whether it's in your job, in your home, in your most important relationships, whatever the situation, right? And as I mentioned, it's a few things. It's having an awareness and an understanding of your emotions, first and foremost. A lot of us don't understand it. I mean, clearly I'm in the language of asking people all the time, how do you feel? What do you feel? You know, and so every time I just think about it, and I will probably ask the feeling question 5 times before I get a feeling response, because we're not cultured to kind of talk about emotions and share, oh, you know, I feel sad, or I feel disappointed, or I really feel hurt, or talk about the emotions that are coming up. And so oftentimes we relate to the situation, we relate to our thought process behind it. This is the decoding of the situation. And yes, it's all very relevant. But to really, you know, just kind of connect with that feeling will create a little space. It's not so natural for us. And I think, you know, if we really think about it, it may not even be deliberate, just not natural. So the awareness or emotional expression, control, and of course, our ability to kind of create the emotion that fuels our engagement in situation, because we recognize that emotions are really powerful for us, right? And so let's kind of dive into these different aspects quickly. So what's emotional awareness? Exactly what it sounds like, right? So creating emotional awareness can be as simple as just checking in with yourself. And we know emotional intelligence research shows us that high levels of awareness of our own and other feelings will lead to greater level of interpersonal effectiveness increase level of personal satisfaction. So you, between the people you are in a relationship with, it will improve the effectiveness of those situations, and it will also increase the level of personal satisfaction. And naturally, relationship will blossom, right? I mean, so, why not dive in and be vulnerable to really explore this area and really talk about the feelings? And so awareness, really, it's just around becoming aware, as simple as that. And sometimes what will happen to us, and I guess in about session 1 or 2, I would have shown you the triangle that speaks to thought, feelings, and behavior, and how this connectivity works for us, that every thought or types of thinking has related emotions that is stimulated, and then it triggers a certain type of behavior, right? It's human behavior studied years on top of years, and it's also biblically bound, right? Our thoughts impact who we are. As a man thinketh, so is he. And so we know that there is a connection. So when our big emotions like come rushing, because oftentimes we feel before we even think, or no, we don't feel before we think. We feel before we recognize our thought. Why is that? Some of our thoughts are subconscious. And in a previous session to us, we spoke about, the mind, and how 5% of the mind's activity is really around controlling conscious activity, and 95% is subconscious. So what happens is that so much of our behavior and thoughts are so patterned that we only need like an external trigger before our brain automatically pushes in a folder that is very familiar. So to break those, it requires us being conscious and being present to recognize. And so once you start this awareness kind of process, awareness brings you back into your 5%, the conscious mind, because you're asking a feeling, you're exploring. So when these huge emotions hit you, what am I feeling physically? But yeah, because emotions don't just show up in what can I say? I can't just say feeling, because physical is a response. Our brain is converting our thought into these emotions, because it's allowing us to produce hormones that stimulate other responses throughout our bodies. So what are you feeling physically? Is your heart beating a little faster? Are you getting a little bit jittery? Are you really just kind of not breathing properly, short of breath? You feel like you're not doing any deep breathing. What is going on? You feel a tightening of your chest. You feel a slight headache. What is going on? What are you feeling physically? Where in your body? So, when it's like excessive thought, you might feel a little pinch, a little nerve pinch in your head. When it's these feeling emotions, you might just feel it kind of in your stomach, but that's space, And so what emotion are you experiencing? So you're checking with your body physically. You try to name this emotion, right? What is it? Is it disappointment? Is it sadness? Is it frustration? Is it shame? Is it guilt? Is it worry? Is it fear? Is it excitement? Is it nervousness, anxiety, but also maybe, potentially a thrill for it. So what are you feeling? And then when you become aware of what you can name that feeling, what thoughts am I having that created this emotional response? That needs a trigger sometimes, because remember, some of our thoughts are so patterned, wired into our belief system, that they actually, our subconscious mind can just one little trigger externally, bam. And so when you start this process of questioning and inquiring, it allows you to really pinpoint and explore. So what level of energy am I experiencing? What emotions correspond with that? And so for persons who may, didn't join the session on levels of energy, I think it's session 2 is still there on YouTube. And I guess in the history, you can find it. But this whole concept of energy, it really ties in to this dynamic of the thoughts that are connected with a particular type of emotion and type of action, and helps you name it in yourself and in others, right? So start with emotional awareness. Emotions can help you know which level of energy you are resonating from, whether it's a level 1, right? Apathy, sadness, fear, guilt, doubt, disappointment, worry, embarrassment. That's level 1. So you think something has been done to you and you feel like you have lost already. That type of thing can have those emotions. Level 2, it may be anger, resentment, frustration, or some form of irritation. You know that's a level 2 conflict energy. Or it could be level 3, want to forgive, you want to maybe tolerate a situation, you just want to move through to get to the end, but you're open to being understanding. Or level 4, maybe compassion and care, or concern, love and gratitude. Level 5, peace, trust, and curiosity. Level 6, joy, calm. Level 7, absolute passion, fearlessness. And so think of emotions as really being clues to get you to pay attention to what is happening around you. So become a detective. That's how you really dive into this awareness, because it's power. If something is in your blind spot, you can't ever make any shift. But once you bring it into a space of consciousness, that's when you are now empowered to choose. And so sometimes you can journal. If it's something that really is getting in your way, you recognize this whole emotion thing. You have some big emotions, maybe attached to level 1 and 2, as I just mentioned. You can write it down. Start to write it down, journal it. Take a mental note, put it in your pen and paper. If you have started the journaling attitude, it's really powerful. And that can help you to monitor the triggers. Because once you become aware of it, I tell you, it becomes something easy to address once you are aware. And so the next one is emotional understanding. So the truth is, emotions are not good or bad. Sometimes we may judge our own emotions or judge other people's expression of emotions, or ask people why. But they're neither good or bad. They're only signals. They're like a clue, as I mentioned, and it gives you the ability to now take action, to act upon it. So if we listen to our emotions, they will help us kind of fine tune the actions, right? Because remember, the thoughts, you dive into the thoughts, you are able to say, is this true or not? Trash it, keep it, whatever the case is. You understand the feeling and how it impacts you. And then you're now in a position to really choose how you respond to it. And so you can listen to and understand your emotions by just asking yourself a few more questions. What can I learn from this emotion? What can you get? What type of information? It can tell you, so you know what type of physical response is going on, and you know the environmental triggers. And it becomes, what is the purpose of it? It let you know what aspect of your life may be in discord, what is off balance. It helps you to really pinpoint, why is this impacting me in this way? There's a message that you have. And oftentimes the other person who you may be in a situation with is completely unaware of what you are experiencing. But again, energy attracts like energy. So it's natural, especially if it's a stress response, it will trigger a stress response in them. And so the core emotions, are fear, love, anger, guilt, and sadness. Core because they are big, they hit you. You feel them. I mean, even when I'm talking to kids and even getting them to really understand these big emotions, and adults too, even parents to now understand how to really help their children to process these emotions, because they hit you like big waves. And so fear, if we know that fear is actually born out of self-protection, fear really comes because of a desire to keep us safe. So you fear whatever, the unknown, failure, the dark, whatever it started with. But remember, fear is a learned behavior, or it's a learned emotion, it's a response. But it's born from a desire to self-protect. And so once you understand those, right? So it keeps you alive because it's real. In a real threatening situation, it is really what keeps you alive. But when it is so active that even outside of harmful situation, it is impacting your action or triggering inaction, then it can also keep you stuck, right? And love is a very, powerful emotion, something to understand and even be able to express. And anger is born out of the belief that there is a threat, there is some form of conflict. Guilt now is really this trigger that it helps you decide who you are. So kind of keeping us, the integrity factor there. And then we know what sadness or grief, from either loss or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be loss of life, but it can be a lost dream or just losing hope in situations, feeling hopeless in situations can trigger sadness. There's nothing you can do to change the outcome. That will trigger feelings of sadness. So we've gone through awareness and understanding our expression. So expression of emotion has two parts. It has appropriate and inappropriate expression. So you have some people will feel like, okay, I'm expressive. I'm going to say whatever I want to feel. Whatever I feel, I'm going to say, whatever comes to mind. If I'm not going to hide the hurt, I'm not going to do whatever goes on, the processing, they will just say it. So there are two different types of expression. Some are appropriate and some are inappropriate. And so while it's very powerful to be expressive, the how you express yourself is really on you. It's fully in your control. Some people, as we know, can be highly expressive, but not appropriate. So how do you trigger this balance of being expressive? Because as I even tell my daughter, like there's suffering in silence. So silence really gets nowhere, right? Don't ever hide anything, just speak about it. But how do you get to this position of expressing what's going on within you in an appropriate manner to get to a desired outcome? And so oftentimes when we talk about emotional intelligence is where we kind of speak to the intention and the impact kind of really just shifting past each other. This is your intention, but how it's received is completely different. And so once you become aware of your emotion, the triggers, etc., and how it may impact others, it puts you in a position to now express it in a way that will move a situation forward that then cause an explosion. All right, I mean, we can think about several different behavior. We interpret different things. Somebody roll their eye, having a conversation, they roll their eye or something. You have a message, you have an interpretation for that, right? And so that may be an inappropriate response because the impact it's having. So becoming just kind of, aware of how you respond typically, and also to get this sense of curiosity about why people respond the way that they do, it helps to create or kind of reduce the angst about it or the interpretation of other people response, because you're injecting that with curiosity rather than judgment. You're becoming curious, you're asking questions, and it allows you to clear the space rather than live with that assumption based on your past belief about that type of response. And then you have emotional control, right? I think this would be the final aspect to it. And this is really just the ability to control. It's very important, especially in a leadership position, whether you are, whatever aspect of your life you're leading in, your career, your social circle, certainly within your family, the ability to manage and control your emotions is very essential, because it allows you to kind of respond and not react. When you are responding, you're processed. When you're reacting, it's literally like a trigger response. And so all that kind of mindfulness in the middle and intentionality is what's taken out in a reaction and what is included in a response. And so think about, emotional control as the ability to control both your emotional reaction in given moments as well as the thoughts that created those reactions. So you're dealing both with the cause as well as the effect, because as I would have mentioned in previous session, emotions or feelings are natural. That is why there are clues. It is a clue to say there is a connected thought that will really trigger in this emotion. And so the control gives you this ability to kind of dive in and really explore the cause and how it's showing up, right? Remember, our emotions are just that. They're just our emotions. It's how we feel. And so they only have the power that we give to them, right? And when we are in situation, we are reacting to whatever stimuli in the environment, we're handing over our power to other situations and naturally, therefore, to our emotions. And so it's very important that we become aware, we understand, we manage and we control how we express it. We manage the expression of it, and then we control how we respond. So the response instead of reacting, right? Something to just kind of bear in mind. And there are opportunities clearly to learn the control that occur frequently within our life. There are various aspects of our life, including relationship, either at home or at work. And so you'll find that in almost every case, your emotional reactions are due to your interpretations, as I mentioned before. Remember, your perception of a situation becomes your reality. It is your interpretation of whatever is happening around you. And so once you really take that step to really understand what's going on, so when you actually try to understand those interpretations, those are what can trigger us. The interpretations is what really pushes us into a response. And so oftentimes you might have people speak about kind of button pushing, button pushing, but they push my button. Why you keep pushing my button? So now we're handing the power of our emotional response to somebody else. Somebody keep pushing your button. It's a regular thing for us to say people push our button, so then we had to respond, right? You are completely out of control. I mean, this is like overdone in social spaces. The whole talk about the Will Smith explosion, right? And so Chris Rock would have demonstrated control, right? Whatever caused him to demonstrate control, he held his control. And Will Smith would have lost control in that moment because how he interpreted his statement, he just moved straight from his interpretation to a reaction. And for Chris Rock to not have responded and in a way that met Will's energy, that is a demonstration of control, whatever would have triggered it. I mean, this is like too much. I feel like it's really overdone. I'm like, when is this going to stop happening? But how it goes on social media, everything has their time and their space, and this too shall pass, right? So recognize what's going on. Understanding emotion and understanding that of others and how people process things really help us when we're in any kind of position, whatever it is, a position of leadership especially. It's so much the buzz topic in leadership. It's been for a while, but even more so now based on how things are and just how things are changing. It's calling for leaders to be more aware of what is going on within the team from an emotional level. We have a lot of triggers in household, kids a lot of children are dealing with depression, right? And it's natural because people around them are also dealing with the same anxieties and depression as a result of things that are happening in the environment that they feel is completely out of control. And in those cases, it's just kind of everything is just up in the air. And so helping people to kind of understand and process their emotions and be aware of what could be happening within the space for other people really can create powerful shifts in leadership, in parenting, in situations once you're interacting with other people. And so 6 steps, right? Anybody who loves steps, you can easily, if you feel like people push your button all the time and you feel like you're being triggered all the time, 6 steps, stop. Yeah, sometimes we just need to just take a pause. Before anything else happens, don't let the energy attract like energy. Control, stop. When you feel those catabolic emotions, just take a pause. It's fine to pause and breathe. Breathing is powerful. And one of the study behind this whole smoking, right, is that people get so addicted to smoking for other reasons, but they create this interpretation that smoking causes them to be calm, but truly, you have the other addictive properties in it once it started. But in the beginning, yes, it may, because guess what? Maybe when they're smoking is the only time they're breathing. They have to take these deep inhale and exhale for the smoking. And that the power in breathing is completely underestimated, because most time if we're on edge, we are not breathing. Rapid action, we're not breathing. We're not practicing the proper breathing, allowing our lungs to expand and the diaphragm to push the air out. We're not breathing. And so because our cells need oxygen, we need oxygen. Every aspect of our being needs it. We're not breathing. So breathe. And then you ask, how appropriate is my emotional reaction in this situation? This anger, this frustration, this irritation, how appropriate is it really? The answers are within you. You know. And what story am I telling myself that causes me to feel this way, whether it's upset or sad or whatever it is? What is that story? The story is that interpretation of the situation. What is that story you're telling yourself? Something about what this person is doing or saying. Oh my God, this sounds familiar. Okay, he's done it before, or this has happened to me before, and that's the story. Sometimes it's not about what is even happening in front of us. It's the story that compound the situation. Oh, this look like, smell like, feel like that situation. Oh my God, it's happening again. The story. So what else may really be going on here? Ask yourself these questions. And if the situation comes up again, how will you handle it? Which energy level do you want to show up at? Your stress reaction, catabolic energy, or the energy you desire? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Which one? And what do you want to do about the situation in the long term? If it is something that keep on happening, this whole button pushing, what do you want to do about it in the long term? Because maybe there's an opportunity there, an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper and to get into that level 5 mode of curiosity and to move through to a solution of win-win. So think about the long term, but in the moment, exercise control so that you are showing up being the person you want to be. And another powerful thing for us is about releasing emotional attachment to outcomes. It's very often that we create this explosion, right? Whether it's disappointment, anger, sadness, whatever, because we have an expectation and our desire that is not met. I remember a client of mine told me that what his definition of expectation was mutually unsigned agreement, right? So both people have expectation in the situation, regardless of what it is, but it's very unsigned because most times there's no awareness of this expectation. And even if there's awareness, there's no buy-in to say, okay, this expectation become our standard or agreement, right? If you're in business, you know about service level agreement, right? This is when we establish what my role is and what your role is. But when we have expectations about how a person is going to speak, be, act, do, all of those are really putting us in a situation to experience disappointment, because without an agreement, it's nothing. And how fair is it that you have expectations on others? How much freedom are you allowing them? If you show up at a level 5, being accepting, where leadership thrives at level 5. How much room are you giving people around you to be themselves? And how much permission are you giving yourself to be yourself? So here's some ways you can shift your emotion. You can smile or laugh. I always say, when situations hit you like this, it's like, if I don't laugh, I cry. But seriously, sometimes just laughing about a situation and trying to find the humor in it will help to shift your emotions. Remember what's in control: thoughts, feelings, actions, right? You control your thoughts and your actions. Your emotions are natural. They're connected up there to a thought. So if you shift any aspect of the thing that's in your control, which is your thought or your actions, they can certainly help you in shifting out of a space that's not serving you emotionally. So any one of these strategies, feel free. Listen to music, speak to someone, journal, read, get a massage, walk, exercise, meditate. Do something. Sometimes you sleep it off, but don't get into the habit of sleeping off things, right? Because when you wake up, it's still there, but in a moment, it may help, especially when lack of sleep is driving that. So we're going to shift right into physical influencer, where sleep really sits in a minute. But how do you make your emotional influencers work for you? When you know which emotions work best for you, in certain situations, you can proactively create those emotions that fuel you rather than drain you. And that's by creating the type of thoughts that trigger that type of feelings. You control those, doing the things that excite you, getting yourself ready. Tony Robbins always talk about the importance of physiology and really getting ourselves into form and really preparing our body, especially when, we need to go into action mode, or if you need to really experience peace. There are things that you can do for that as well. So how do you prepare yourself for the state that you need to be in so that it is serving you? When your emotional factors are optimal for you, you are much more likely to experience the benefits that can come from interacting with others. And so just think about a time when you have experienced stress or kind of a lack of engagement due to emotional factors. Maybe it was, your button pushed, or you had an expectation that wasn't met. What were those circumstances? And just think about the opposite. Think of a time when you were actually in a great mood, happy, calm, satisfied. What were those circumstances? Compare the two situations in terms of the amount of stress, tension, or anxiety, or just how engaged you felt in that task. And see the difference. Now, how about creating that situation that serves you in moments when you need to? All right, we're sliding out. I spent a lot of time on emotions because I feel like it is powerful, because it is. And it's so relevant to us in all our relationships, and even our relationship with ourselves. Yeah. And so the next one is physical influence. So we're going to move through these much faster, right? And so when we think about physical factors, it's really, everything that impacts, our whole state of physical wellness or state of physical well-being and readiness. And so, especially since this whole COVID thing and the lockdown and lack of activity and things, are naturally getting back in order. Some people lost weight, gained weight, different things are happening, everything may be off. Sleeping pattern, different things are off. Nutrition is probably off or better. Less eating out, more home cooked meals, whatever it is. But this whole aspect of thinking about our physical well-being, because if we don't have the energy to show up for whatever we want to do, I promise you, you still won't get there or hit your performance goals, right? And so when you talk about health, these are the aspects of the physical influencer to consider, the total functionality of your body. And so one way to, basically, this is the ability to kind of function at the best you can for your desired experience, right? Health is wealth. That's the new message, right? If we spend so much more time on improving our health than chasing the dollar, right? We may have more years to kind of earn the same, right? Sleep and rest. Adequate sleep is essential to performing well. We know that. We tell our kids, we got to do it. It's hard, yeah. insufficient sleep can impact your mental and your physical. And so lack of sleep will lead to increased cortisol. We've spoken about the stress hormone cortisol before, and we know that stress hormone, it breaks down things. So it will decrease our growth activity or cell repair, and it will kind of impact as well other functions of the body like digestion. You might even have indigestion as a result of it. And so very important that we establish a pattern. If you may go off a day or two, how do you get back on track? Right? So track your sleep, possibly if you can. There are apps for everything. Do a brain dump. If you find that when you go to bed, a lot of things floating in here, you can't concentrate, you can't focus, do a brain dump before bed. Have a notepad, just jot down everything and kind of clear your mind, right? If you have ever done any of these centering activity with me, do it before you have meditation apps, clear your head so that you can get great rest. Or, you can use natural herbs, maybe chamomile tea or some honey to actually, get a good night's rest. And then you have nutrition and hydration. Fueling your body with nutritious food ensures that you have the stamina to get through your full day, right? Some of us, our day is not just the 9 to 5, we have to come home. So the full day, right? We have to come home because we have home activity, whatever that may be. If it's kids or your hobby or your wife, whatever the case is, your full day activity. And nutrition and hydration, this is something that in our hustle and bustle we ignore. Not drinking enough water, not eating the right types of food. And I heard this thing said, everything that you put in your mouth, think, is it clogging you or clearing you? If you ask that question before, for anything you put in your mouth, clogging or clearing, all of those baked goods are out, right? So if you ask yourself that question, clogging or clearing, and make that decision on eating food that really is helping your cells function well, it can be beneficial. I've heard from another expert that says 70% of our diet should be living food. Yeah, vegetables, fruit, whatever. So 70% of each meal. So I'm sharing you. I'm not there yet, but I'm still sharing the knowledge, right? And so recognize our cells need oxygen, and it has to perform its function, it has to excrete. So every cell in your body goes through these three things. It needs oxygen, it performs its activity, it excretes. And so we too have to treat our body in that way. Breathing. We spoke about breathing before. I'm talking for, almost an hour now. So of course I've not been breathing well, but you know what? Most time we go through 24 hours and we're not breathing properly. We're not doing inhales and exhales. Our natural breathing pattern may not even be a healthy pattern. So be aware of that and breathe more, right? If you're a smoker, scrap it and just do some breathing breaks. If you have a lot of stress, do some mini meditation sessions, some mini breathing exercise. It will really do wonders for you and everything, your emotions and your physical health. And of course, exercise. Optimal fitness will vary for everybody, but we all benefit from higher levels of fitness. So your desire is going to be for you, your stage, your life stage, what is important for you, what you need energy for, if you want to either, maybe it's for forming your body, you want to really tone here and there. So it's really a personal definition of what this looks like, but there's benefit for all by really adding exercise to your daily habit. And then, of course, image and appearance. Energy is contagious. You feel good if you look good, right? And guess what? It's contagious. So you're sharing it. You step in, you feel it. You can see it in your face. You look, or you put yourself together. And we know the days that, hey, everything is off, because it's evident. And let's talk about social influence. So we have 10 minutes to wrap, and that's fine. We'll run through. Social, this is very important. This is your circle we're talking about, right? Very important influencer. It involves having the right amount and the type of interaction with other people. Oftentimes, this is absolutely not something that we plan, think about. It just happens. Especially again with how changes in work and has happened, is that your interaction is now limited to the people in front of you sometimes, and some are the people who you have to talk to either for work. And so we become like not deliberate about really shaping this aspect of or life. We're social beings, so we need connection. But when we're not deliberate about the connection, the what we do, the when we do it, and how we do it, sometimes that can really trigger some amount of stress for us. We can become too saturated with that type of interaction, and completely disconnected from some. So very important. Social influences will detract from your energy when conditions aren't optimal for you. Or sometimes you're in a space with a lot of catabolic energy. So be aware of what's going on, because energy attracts like energy. And sometimes you are not showing up that high level energy to raise their energy. And maybe not in that mode of raising anybody's energy, but it's so easy to get sucked into that catabolic space, right? So let's talk about catabolic relationships. This aspect of a lot of relationship is what causes a lot of stress for many people. And so different relationships can detract from your energy. If you find that you are not around people who help you grow, either you or your relationship will need to change that relationship, right? And remember, oftentimes when we think about it, we have this natural thing. It's not working. Oh my God, let's just cut it. There are a lot of things that you can do to change a relationship. So first you have to really understand which of your relationships are catabolic, that really feels like it's sapping your energy, it's draining you. Yeah, sometimes the relationship with your children, spouse, team, people in your inner circle, your parents, whatever it is. Sometimes those relationships, you can't change the status of the relationship, and saying this is not going to serve you in the long term either. So identifying though where that catabolic energy is very important. What relationship feel like they are draining your energy? They're not fueling you, they're sapping you. Understand what's going on. Remember, the catabolic energy is really a mindset. So it's the thought you're having about the person, the situations, you, the expectations, etc. That's triggering that catabolic space. So there are 5 ways to deal with these. 5, not 1. Not just end it, because you can't end some of them. Not just hide, because you can't hide from your kids. So not just, 5 ways. So 1, you can remain a victim to it. And yes, victim mean it's been done to you and you can't do anything. The mindset is why the victim word is used. And so this includes just accepting the feeling of loss or control or powerlessness in this situation. And it may cause you some amount of anger, grief, or depression. But understand what is blocking your willingness to change this relationship. Don't just accept and just say, okay, this is where I fall and that's it. What is blocking your willingness to change this relationship? Then you have leave it as an option. So which relationship have you decided to remove from your life? Right? Because you feel like this is it. Can't do anymore. I heard somebody recently spoke about, having a client and like, okay, this client is really, it's not a coaching client, right? But a service-based client. And so sometimes we make decision to leave situations, but it's so unresolved that guess what? It's going to keep recurring because we didn't spend the time to really understand it and move to a resolution. Though leaving is definitely an option, right? So then you have accept it. And acceptance is just really for taking it for what it is. And just say, okay, I'll work with it. And you might find yourself in a space of just kind of tolerating, etc. And so some of these positions are still a catabolic response and will keep the catabolic energy there. But then you have the power to change it. How can you change this relationship? By changing your approach, your thought about it. Right? Move through to resolution. Become curious rather than judging yourself or others. Or you can change your perspective of the relationship. Focus on the purpose of it, the benefits in it. Activates your sense of gratitude around the relationship. So rather than changing the relationship with actions and new behaviors, a relationship can also be changed through modifying or shifting how you look at it. Different lenses bring different experiences. Asking yourself some questions to really dive in can help to shift your perspective. What's really triggering this? Some of these same exploration that we kind of spoke about. And so sometimes understanding, of course, is always a more powerful position because that's a position of win-win. All right. And when we talk about ability to still in the social setting, our ability to communicate and listen is very important. And so when even as parents, leaders, whatever situation in your is, developing sound skills and strategies to communicate is very essential. Right? And when you think about listening, there are three different stages of listening. You have this very subjective listening that somebody is speaking and you listen for specific things. Right? You already have an hypothesis in your head about them. You have a figure out what they're going to come. You almost want to finish the sentence. I have done it. Right? You almost want to finish the sentence for them. Or you butt in because you think you know. That's subjective. Subjective listening. You're listening for a specific thing. And naturally, the person is not going to feel heard, not going to feel understood naturally. And then you have objective listening. You're giving focus, you're giving attention, you're there. You may be even restating and repeating some of the things that are being said. But your presence, you have a higher intelligence, you have a higher sense of wisdom is not there. And so the highest level of listening is called intuitive listening. At this stage, yes, you're fully focused. And I mean, when I think about my life being a coach, this is when my intuition shows up the most. And so you're very present, but you're not just listening for the words and you are repeating them. You're listening for the unspoken words, the thing that was not said, but was demonstrated in the energy or in the emotions. And so intuitive listening, when you can really connect with a person and show up like this, whether it's your child, your spouse, your team, your colleagues, whatever it is, this level of listening can raise the level of any relationship or social situation. And so, of course, it's very important that you create your anabolic support team because sometimes relationships you're in may be serving you in one aspect, but then you're underserving other aspect as well. And so environment beats will. And sometimes you have to create that environment that you need at a point in time based on what is happening within your life. And so that could look like a peer group setting, a mentor group, even, a particular group of like-minded people who are moving in the same direction. And so choosing your social setting is certainly within your control because different aspects of your social life will contribute in different ways, but be in control, right? Environment influencer, this is the last one, and I'm going to really talk about it quickly, right? But we know what that is. It's around us. So it's our belief that our environment will allow us to either to complete or enjoy the task that you're about to do in a way that you'd like to. Environment influences will detract from energy when you encounter an environment that you believe prevents you from functioning in an optimal manner or in a manner to which you are accustomed. And so whenever you go through any form of change, I'm sure a lot of people have had when COVID just happened, that shift of how do I function in a space with distraction, my kids, my bed, and all of these things around me, the fridge, food, whatever. And it was not optimal. And then 2 years in, you're like fully transitioned, like, how do I go back to this space without, far more productive here? So it's just being aware because what could work for you may not work for somebody else. Somebody may have been brought up in an environment where they have a big family, so they learn how to focus around noise and distraction, or in a community that would have a lot of noise. And so your ability to be effective in a noisy space is there. But for another person who was kind of our only child isolated, used to this quiet Zen space, may find a loud, cluttered work environment to be really draining their energy. So think about the conditions, the setting, the kind of equipment you have, your ability to use technology. The truth is, all of these aspects impacts us. All of these different aspects that I would have spoken about impacts us, spiritual, mental, emotional, right? Physical, environmental. all can impact us and trigger how we show up to perform. They can create stress, but once you become aware of it, you can shift those to a way that really serve you, right? Some are within you and some are external to you. But at the end of the day, you are in full control of yourself. Your thoughts, your actions, and your feelings are like powerful clues to help you figure out what's going on. All right, so I am going to wrap. That's the end of our 6 today. This was just a teasing to say what we're going to talk about next, right? 7 steps to reinvent your life. And we are going to really dive into that come next week. We are right on the hour. And so I want to thank you for participating and for talking. Anybody wants any questions? Feeling good from the inside shines through to the outside. Absolutely. Sometimes you have to get your body into form and just really hit a little energy mode, you know, however you create it and get in that space. Sometimes it's Zen space that you need to really allow you to really show up in the way that you want to powerfully. And so the truth is, a lot of the time we are completely not in control. And I mean, I have more than one coaches, right? I have a coaching circle and I have this, and you have helpers, psychologists. I do that for a lot of individuals. Sometimes you need to extend. I know people that's in the group now that have their own little accountability group or a little mentorship group. And so find the support that you need. It's available. Don't think you have to figure it out all on your own. The same old saying that said two heads better than one is real, right? And I benefit a lot from a lot of contribution that I receive and I'm open to from other people. So be aware, don't judge. I mean, these sound like very much instruction, but the Bible tells you, so I can say it like that. But judgment really destroys or breaks down relationship, and it breaks down you and your sense of self. So show powerfully, be curious, and step into your power of choice. Thank you so much all for listening. Are there any questions? I don't think I see any. It's true, but sometimes it's not. Yes, it's never easy. And next week we talk about doing the work, because the truth, it is never easy. But you have to ask yourself, what will it cost me to not shift into this that I want for myself? What will it cost you? If you keep doing what you're doing right now, whatever it is, whether it's work, relationship, career, family, parenting, if you keep on doing the same thing, what will it cost you? And so, why not try something different? Yeah. All right. Thank you. So next week, 7 steps into shifting in, and I'm looking forward to that discussion. And we have 2 more sessions to go. And for those 2 sessions, we're going to be doing really some action mode, right? You have been joining me constantly and I really appreciate the support, but I want you to do the work. I want you to see things shifting within you. And of course, you know, I'm a coach. So whenever you're ready for a conversation, feel free. What I'm going to ask you to do, I'm offering 30 minutes complimentary coaching sessions to anyone who joins my call. Just DM me, Unleash. That's the message. That's the whole essence of this. Unleash, just DM me Unleash, send me your email address and your phone number, and I will send you the link to create the meeting for our time. So 30 minutes consultation. I look forward. Just DM me Unleash, send me your name and your email. All right. Have a good and wonderful night. And thank you for sticking with me right throughout. If I'm going to end the recording at this point, but if anybody wants to ask a question, dive into something, I'm going to hang on for about 5 minutes while, you know, other people, if you have to go and eat your dinner, I wrap. I completely get it and completely value and appreciate you spending time.